is introspection.
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call this meeting of Independent School District 544 to order. Clerk, will you establish a quorum for us, please?
Certainly. Kirby Anderson.
Present.
Natalie Knudsen. Here. Melanie Cole.
Present?
Matthew Lemke.
Here.
Missy Hermes here, and Stephen Vigasa.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Melanie. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Missy. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda passes. Moving on to a resolution of acknowledgements. Secretary will take care of that.
Certainly. I'd like to offer the following resolution. Congratulations to Craig Peterson, KSS, Kennedy Secondary School Orchestra Director, for reaching the quarterfinals in the 2021 Music Educator Award presented by the Recording Academy and Grammy Museum.
And you have that resolution?
And move for its adoption.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Natalie Knudsen.
Yes.
Melanie Cole.
Yes.
Matthew Lemke.
Yes.
Missy Hermes, yes. Stephen Vigasa.
Yes.
Kirby Anderson.
Yes.
Natalie Knudsen.
Yes.
Okay. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to reports, we have our secondary principal, Dean Monkey, here to come and present.
I'll just hide in the corner over here.
Good morning.
Morning, everybody.
So,
First of all, I have to be honest, I've been taking a little time off over the course of the last 2 to 3 weeks. But so many projects at home, I think I have to get back to work in order to rest up. So it's good to get back in here and get back into the swing of things again. Just to give you a little status on some hires that have probably already come past your agenda or may show up today here. But we were able to hire for some part-time ALC English with Christy Angus and a resident here that has been in and out of the teaching field, both at the college and the high school level over the course of the last several years. And she's very excited about getting an opportunity to work in our ALC, which we're very thankful for. IQ Academy had some hires at the secondary level, a couple in the elementary, but also in the area of special education, health, and work-based learning. So it was nice to get those hires done right here early in June, so we could get that all squared away. And then we're very fortunate to find a DCD, special education teacher, for here at Kennedy in relationship to someone that Eliza Robertson, who had worked over with Lakes Country in relationship to their academy schools over there. So we've said before, we're not shy about stealing the best. So we got a very good find there. And we were able to find a 5th grade teacher with about a few years of connections to the Lakes area here in Emily Shakey, and so we're excited to have her on board as well. Special thanks to our custodians that have been moving around the building here, working very hard to get everything ready, especially in relationship to looking to get some face-to-face activities started up here again towards the end of July with middle school, summer school, outer adventures, a few other things coming into the building. It was great for those folks too, our custodians, to get out and get some early cleaning done and be ready for a little bit more activity around here. But my main, and I plan on working over the course of the next 2-3 weeks in relationship to placements for 5th and 6th grade with the help of Mrs. Rund, of course, and also working on our middle school schedule and getting that all squared away. We have it down rough draft on paper in the spring because it has to match our high school schedule, but actually putting into the computer and making everything work and every kid actually finds a section, that's the kind of work that will be going on. And of course, I can't do that without the help of Sue Lewis, for sure. It was just absolutely fantastic. So we'll be working on that coming up here. But my main reason for being on the agenda this morning was to talk specifically about the area of secondary math. And this isn't something that I haven't been begging for here in the past. So I have to explain a little bit about maybe what's changed. And I kind of anticipated this as being an upcoming issue for this year, just in relationship to our spring term and how we went about that. So I did do a little bit of digging and add some data and found out that although we had a sizably fewer recorded Fs for our second term at the secondary level in relationship to 9 through 12, we had more than twice as many D minuses. I think what that tells me is that we gave students a pretty good chance to pass in relationship to this last spring. But does that mean that they're really on track in relationship to their comfort level with math, you know, in intermediate algebra, advanced algebra, and geometry? I'm not so sure. What I'd like to do is I'd like to be more prepared during this upcoming year in relationship to math with the idea that we expand our options in relationship to credit recovery. The credit recovery we've been using is maybe sending some students over to the ALC in relationship to taking a course over there. But Dennis Bowman is really full over there. His plate is overflowing. So I'd like to be able to not only at ALC, but also at KSS, be ready with a third of a teacher to be able to take on those students earlier that might be struggling in relationship to the area of math. By taking them on early, I mean that if we really see a student that is faltering, we can switch them to our Edmentum curriculum, which then allows that student to work a little bit more at their own pace in relationship to completing a particular course. I think the problem that we see in math is that the students can do it, but can they do it at the pace with which we're instructing over here at KSS? Because if they don't keep up with the pace over here, they get a failing mark at the end of the term and they have to retake the whole course. If we can switch them to Edmentum and do more by way of credit recovery and even advanced credit recovery before that even happens, maybe they won't finish over the course of the semester, but they'll finish sometime. They'll just keep working at their pace, hitting that 80% mastery level and moving on to the next piece of the curriculum. So that really is the difference. It's the absolute key to keep students going, because if you fail your first semester in relationship to math, it also impacts your second semester because you can't move on. And you have to move into a credit recovery method to keep taking math. So I'd like to be proactive. Our section numbers, our class size numbers in relationship to math at the secondary level are very good. We've worked at that hard, we've added some things. They're great, but those classes are all set right now. And what I'd like to do is make this add so that we can be a little bit ahead of the ball game rather than trailing behind with what I'm anticipating some students that are gonna have issues. The way we would fill that position is Mr. Troy Lee has got a couple IQ classes right now on his schedule, but he's got 4 classes over here at KSS. We would probably split his time between ALC and KSS in this credit recovery for a third of his job and find somebody to pick up the IQ Academy sections that he would have been teaching. So I think it's a fillable position as well, because that makes a difference when you're looking at part-time math. Those teachers are a little scarce out there. They don't have to work for part-time, but that's a way that we can cover it. So I guess with that explanation, I just leave it open for questions.
Why do we do that? Why don't we let students go, if they've already mastered part of ninth grade algebra, why don't we let them continue on from there? Why do we make them take that whole thing all over again?
Great question. Sometimes it would be very hard to determine what they've been successful on in relationship to a regular term. Anything's possible. We could certainly do that. We just haven't done that across the whole high school as a standard practice. That's exactly the model that we use at the ALC.
Right.
Right. Students progress at their own pace. And English is a little bit impacted by that because you need 8 terms and you've only got 4 years to do it. But it's easier to take a double English class than it is to take a double math class over a term. So, great question. We haven't moved to that model.
If we expend money for a third of a position, how will that fold into our potential COVID options this fall? Do you see that position being able to work effectively if we're still out of the building, for example?
I think that it may be more of a case where we move more students, have those students get more individual attention from a particular teacher if we're in distance learning. More contact, more able to be able to answer questions, smaller class size, probably obviously than even what the very doable class sizes we have right now, but could just make more contact.
So Dean, do you know if this is an issue with other districts with this level of math, that we're seeing more D-minuses and Fs? I'm just kind of wondering if it's just because of the age group, the type of curriculum, or is it something that's our problem?
No, I think it's very widespread.
Yeah.
Math is a real difficult subject to be able to recover in the last 3 weeks of the term.
Right.
It just doesn't work that way. Where
Right.
social studies, English, you can turn in a few papers, you can probably kick it in gear.
Right.
You just can't do that over the course of progression. I think everybody's looking for math options.
Okay.
And then Dean, how many students could actually take if you would, so if a third of the position, you would anticipate we could go up to how many students with that position then? With that?
I think we could easily do 50. I think we could, because of the fact that it's just, the trick is kind of in scheduling, because you've only got but Dennis has also got a period, so we literally almost got a half a day. 3 out of 7 periods would be covered in relationship to scheduling students for this credit recovery. He's worked with Edmonton as well. We have some teachers that are very comfortable working with Edmonton here in relationship to science and English and social studies. Not so much in the area of math. We had Carrie Flatto was doing that this last term, kind of a science math, just expanding her abilities because she's really good with that, and was working with a couple particular students. But yeah, there's no reason why you can't take on almost a normal load. It's just in relationship to, it may have to be a little bit more free-flowing. If we could even get maybe Troy to agree that he'd use kind of like 3 periods in order to get in 2, give us more scheduling options to be able to reach kids. He probably would be willing to do something like that.
What's our math department doing to, maybe, is there some staff development, some professional development? If this is a widespread problem, other math teachers and the math departments may be addressing it? Is our math department looking at, why aren't our students passing? Or if they're passing, they're getting a D-minus?
I think this last, for better or for worse, in relationship to distance learning, it probably provided more options because teachers found out it's not the end of the world to have myself recorded. One of the biggest problems to keep up with math, of course, is if you're absent for a week or a few days, you've missed that instruction, it's so hard to get that back. Well, what happens if everything could be recorded? It just makes total sense. So a student could go back in and watch some of that, on their own time, So I think that could have been the largest staff development that we've ever done in relationship to teaching. Teachers, it's okay to be recorded. And that, I think that will really help in the future.
Any other questions from Mr. Monken? Okay. This is on later in the agenda. Thank you. Okay, Kirby Anderson, 544 Education Foundation and Finance.
Okay, nothing on the finance side, but a few items on the Education Foundation. We did meet again on July 9th, and our meetings the last 3 or 4 months have been virtual meetings, not even what we're used to on Zoom, where they're actually just meeting via email. One of the highlights was the gift cards for the grads. We had 170 graduates. They got a gift card for $33 each, and I think they were spread out over 10 different restaurants. The latest word we got now is that every single 2020 class reunion has been canceled for this year. I think 2010 was the last one they were holding out. But, so next year will be busy because you'll have the reunions that normally come in 2021, as well as a lot of them that will be carried over. We also have a 2021 all-school reunion scheduled for next year. And some of the events would be a golf tournament, a retired staff reunion, tours. They're looking at tours of schools, the new library downtown, the hockey training facility, and hopefully the Lincoln School. They're talking about a parade, individual reunions that week that will also be coordinated, and then there's also a flying breakfast. So there's a lot scheduled to be a busy 3-day weekend. We do have 2 board members that are leaving. They have a rotational thing where they serve their term, so they're looking for two board members right now. A couple things up in the air right now would be every year we do the teacher in service catering, where the foundation serves breakfast for the teachers when they're doing their in service. So that's up in the air for September 3rd. Also, Outer Pride Night is scheduled for 9/18. That's up in the air. And right now, the Hall of Fame meeting and presentation and everything that all the kind of pomp and circumstance we put on there for October 9th and 10th is still on. And we're looking at hopefully having an August 13th meeting in person. So we'll see how that goes. Any questions on foundation?
Thank you, Kirby. Okay, Melanie Cole, Special Ed Co-op, Region 1, and activities.
So on 2 of the 3 items, there's nothing new to report. Region 1, we reestablished our meeting practices, our annual reviews in June, so we did that, and we approved a wage and compensation package for the staff, and that was the most significant thing we've done with Region 1. They continue to work. Now they are back in the building. Our meetings continue online, and probably will continue to do that for a bit longer, but that's all I have.
Any questions for Melanie? Thank you, Melanie. Missy Hermes, Staff Development and Policy.
Staff development hasn't met and policy has not.
Okay, that's a short report then. Thank you, Missy. Natalie Knudsen, Wellness and Buildings and Grounds.
Neither groups have met. However, we'll be talking a little bit about some facility needs during our work session today. And work has begun out at Lincoln, some of the plumbing and interior things. So more to come on that.
Any questions for Natalie? Thank you, Natalie. From under my reports, the Minnesota High School League is meeting tomorrow, so I have nothing to report for them. I think, to be honest, they're probably waiting for the governor, like everybody else, for July 27th to come out, and they'll make some decisions at that point in time. For Lakes Country Service Co-op, we did meet in June, at the end of June, on the 25th, and it was just kind of our regular meeting. Went through our budget and approved the budget for Lakes Country Service Co-op, and then we have our cooperative purchasing, and just again, this is a tri-state volume, so this is working on South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota, and they are up since last year at the end of May by 17% overall. So they've seen a very good uptick on that, And a lot of that has to do with South Dakota and the volume that they are purchasing from the cooperative, so that's kind of cool to see. The other thing that they did, that Lakes Country Service Co-op has also entered into agreement, is to be able to do COVID-19 purchasing for school districts. And so for masks and gloves and face shields, so they're also an avenue to go through to be able to cooperative purchase. So trying to reach out to members and stuff like that to at least give people kind of a one-place shop and not have to go shopping around themselves. So, and that's what I have to report on my reports. Any questions? Okay, Steve Igasa, Legislative Liaison, Meeting Confer, and Curriculum Review.
Okay, so legislative session ended, special session. So I'm just gonna go through some highlights of what was actually passed. Really the theme is COVID-19. I mean, there's a lot of things that passed that wouldn't normally have gotten passed had we not had a pandemic, but so things, for instance, like students' absences and distance learning, it doesn't count as a truancy. The commissioner's waiving testing and accountability requirements. They're allowing districts to kind of move money between different budgets depending on what, there's some budgets that didn't get touched, there's some budgets that got used a lot more, so they're allowing some intermingling of some of those funds, which I'm sure is a lot of fun for Blake. But it's basically, again, it's a COVID thing. And because of that, along lines of that, the commissioner is actually required to actually change some of the formulas for things like special education, adult and basic education. Man, it's hard to talk in this thing, sorry. And it's, again, it's just being able to move some money around that they weren't able to move before. They're waiving the requirement, the probationary requirement for some teachers, the 120 days for new teachers. Non-COVID related, they've actually changed some things for requirements for curriculum and things. One of them is to require construction-related career counseling. So the construction and trade industries are now being required to be part of the discussion when you're talking about a career, which is like, why weren't we doing that before? Like, I didn't realize that wasn't a requirement, but that's going to be now a firm requirement. Interestingly enough, I don't know why I thought this was kind of funny, but they said that you are not allowed to expel a pre-K kid. Thinking about how you would expel a pre-K kid, I don't know. but that's the saying, you're not allowed to do that. On the federal level, the government, as we well know, passed the CARES Act, which allotted about $13.5 billion for aid for schools. A lot of it was focused on low-income districts, and our state followed suit with about $140 million of that for Minnesota schools. A lot of them were focused on technology grants and things like that, and we left about 10% of that available for districts that didn't qualify for the low income based off of Title I and free and reduced lunch program. So it was focused on tech, mental health, and summer school program. There is no change to the formula yet that I saw. January 15th, 2021, I think we'll have a lot more answers on what's going to happen with the education formula, because everything is just kind of up in the air. But they did get some things passed. There's no bonding bill passed yet. The governor might call a special session. I didn't read the news this morning, but it would have been today, so I don't have that. It wouldn't have had any results yet anyways, but that, the added vaping prevention education for middle and high schoolers. So kind of a meh, session, but it's, again, 2021 is just gonna be kind of a mulligan year, it seems like, with everything that happens, so. And so that's it for legislative that I have. Meet and confer is not met or conferred, and curriculum review is not met either, so that's all I got.
Questions for Steve? Mr. Monkey, just on a question on the CTE, the trades and coming into the schools and stuff, have you had any of the trade organizations contact us as a school district? I know down in the metro area they have been working, and actually they're having some of their trade people go in and actually teach classes within their high school to give them just kind of like our ninth grade has, you know, an overview of what their trade is and kind of get that kind of interest. Do you know how that's going to work for outstate Minnesota, I guess? Not metro or school districts, but, you know.
Not specifically, you know, we have a couple of different advisory groups that work both in auto and in across CTE. So we get a little bit of exposure there from, also through M-State and some of their programs. I know that some of their instructors are invited in, of course, to make presentations. Auto has a lot of people come in, of course, but yeah, you know, nothing formally, maybe in relationship to specifically like this, but we have had a lot of industry contact through those avenues.
Okay. Any other questions? Superintendent Drake.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I do have a number of items to roll through this morning, so bear with me. First on the building updates. The steel trusses have now started to arrive with the Lincoln project. This was a huge piece because those trusses need to be in place before other components of the construction can continue. So that's good, and as Natalie mentioned, the plumbing pieces have been accomplished. Still looking at a projected completion date of mid-December. This week we'll start doing some room recarpeting. This is just a reminder of the district's process. We order a custom carpet. So the carpet is actually ordered, and it takes about four to 5 months to get it in. So it's done a year in advance. We had hoped to do 4 rooms this summer. We had enough supply in hand to do 3. So 1 classroom in McKinley will be done, 1 classroom in Adams will be done. Cleveland, nor KSS had any immediate needs, but we will recarpet the ALC office. I am still awaiting a quote to increase the restrooms over at the ALC as well. There's roughly 80 students plus the staff over there, and the restrooms really don't meet the needs for the number of people, so we're trying to work on that issue. The bench project, the bench had been damaged with some snow removal last winter. That's now been replaced. There's a bench over at the Cleveland playground, and it ended up kind of being a mud pit there, so we had some cement slab work poured over at that. That's been completed. We've got some fencing that's being extended, and also the path of that being altered a little bit to better meet our needs. One of the bigger projects this summer is the resurfacing of the parking lots, and so the first step of that has now been completed. That was done last Friday. We still need to do some striping out there, and that's going to change a little bit on the angle of the buses to better align with student pickup and release and getting out of the parking lots. We also have some concrete projects going on. There were some issues with some concrete outside the Gold Gym, and also we had a concrete issue with water drainage kind of by the gymnastics entrance exit out at Roosevelt. So that's been completed. An update on the chiller. Bert Overland did indicate to Mr. Maston that he would not be able to get the chiller fully functioning this summer. We had been working with the city of Fergus Falls, and they had been in communication with the Hockey Association. We explored the option of diverting some of our cooling capacity from KSS to potentially put a sheet of ice down for about 3 weeks over at the hockey arena. As Don Cast continued to evaluate our ability to do that, essentially it came down to, depending on temperature and humidity levels, we would have to divert nearly 100% of our cooling capacity for a period of 5 weeks to get that ice made and maintained. And that just didn't seem feasible to me. We have a number of summer programs that are going to be starting up in-house here in about another week, plus people that need to get work done in anticipation of the start of the 2020-21 school year. And so it's just not going to work out. We're not going to have ice over there this summer. We are bringing in at least one outside consultant to take a look at that chiller and analyze its potential as a viable project going forward. And so hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the district has some answers about whether this is a solution moving forward or whether we need to scrap what's been done so far and move into a different direction. We are kind of have a soft facility reopening. We have the gyms and some coaches working with some athletes right now. The weight room's been reopened. All of those things are taking place with very strict guidelines. Coaches and advisors were required to put plans in place that Derek Abraham's reviewed in advance, and those were in accordance with the guidelines that the Minnesota State High School League had set, as well as the Minnesota Department of Health. So as far as I know, that's all going smoothly so far. We interviewed 6 applicants for the Building and Grounds / Facilities Director position late last week, and are in the process of moving forward with that. We are still looking for a number of devices to be returned. Don't quote me exactly on this. I think we're still out about 80 devices. So that's pretty significant. So for parents and families listening, please get those returned ASAP. We need to go through those units and make sure that they're fully functional, anticipating that we are going to need every one of those for the start of the upcoming school year. Which leads me to the start of the upcoming school year. Certainly we're all waiting for Governor Walz to make his announcement during the week of July 27th. There was some indication, maybe premature to mention it on my part, but some indication last week with some comments he had made publicly that he is strongly leaning against a full reopening brick and mortar for this fall. And I think most of us that have been trying to follow the thoughts going on here over the last month or so have probably anticipated that we will be asked to do some form of hybrid plan with the reopening. I did meet, I've done a number of webinars or sessions with MREA or area superintendents. All of us are talking specifically about hybrid models. The building principals and I met for an afternoon last week and went through an analytical process where we evaluated probably about 8 different hybrid model options, just kind of assessing their ability to provide high quality instruction, their ability to keep both students and staff safe, and the ability to meet the needs and expectations of our families. And so with that process now under our belt, this coming Wednesday, we will meet as an entire admin team and again continue our analysis in particular of various hybrid plan options, and we will start putting our plans in place to meet the CDC or the Minnesota Department of Health requirements going into next year. I expect that we will get a pretty significant amount of work done during that work session. Very, very shortly following that, we will have some information out for staff input. And upon receiving the staff input and taking those recommendations and considerations into effect, we will get some input from our families there, making sure that what we have in place is going to meet their needs and expectations as well. I do think that our timeline is healthy at this point. I think that we will have input from staff and from our parents in advance of the governor's announcement during the week of July 27th. Recognizing that based on what he's indicating at that time, we still may have to adapt or modify the plans that are in place at that point. So with that, I will turn it over to questions.
So this might be a question for Matt or Melanie, because you weren't here and I wasn't here, about the chiller. Why is that a school expense when that's a city property? Like, why are we paying for that and maintaining that chiller? Do you remember?
Well, the chiller actually cools and
Well, I know,
heats
and-
our buildings, our facilities.
Oh, I thought it was just for the ice. I thought you were talking about, okay.
No.
Okay,
The
misunderstood
the whole
then.
system it's a dual system, so it actually heats and cools Kennedy Secondary School too, so.
Okay.
So it
maybe
has a
just-
dual purpose.
Okay, I thought you were talking about just the ice. I'm sorry.
Well, and maybe I'll just speak briefly on the history of it. In looking at the information that was present historically with that project, the chiller project was the district's, so it was not a city project, although the city did partner with us on that. Originally, the district looked at a couple of quotes, both of which were in excess of $600,000 to bring a brand new unit in. We had the opportunity to use a refurbished unit instead, and so that's the route ultimately, for practical and economic reasons, that the district chose to go that route. Again, in partnership with the city, who contributed a significant amount of financial support to it. We're about 4 years into it now without a working unit, and so that's kind of how things from inception to where we're at now, how that all unrolled.
Any other questions for Superintendent Trey?
I had a question on when you're in discussions with your admin staff about a hybrid model, you had any discussions yet, like with Mike Clark over at Ottertail Coaches? Because as far as, I mean, if we went to a morning, afternoon thing, or if you want to do social distancing in the buses, it's going to increase,
Yeah.
it's going to drastically change how they handle it. I'm just curious if they're, I'm sure they're aware of it, but.
Yes, so I have reached out to Mike Clark, and so here's my 2 cents on it. A half-day model may not be feasible just because of the costs involved.
Sure.
It would essentially add a complete retrieval and return route to the expenses of the district transportation-wise, at in excess of $2 a mile. What I had discussed or communicated with Mike was starting to examine what it might look like to more of an A-B model, where you're transporting roughly half of the students on any given day.
Sure.
There are still some complications with that, and hopefully during the week of July 27th we'll get more clarity. If we're operating under a hybrid model, the state is stating at this point that we would operate under strict social distancing, which is 6 feet. Even at half capacity, we can't get 6 feet between all the students on the bus. They will allow family members to sit together, but that's problematic for us. As a response, we could anticipate a request of our families that if they can possibly drop their children off at the school in the morning and pick them up on site in the afternoon, that would help out a great deal. And then also for students that have their driver's licenses and can drive to school, again, helping to reduce the capacity of some of those kids on the bus would help us a lot. So that's what's been given to Mike so far.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Superintendent Drake? Thank you. Move on to our general consent items. We have the minutes for the June 22nd board meeting. Bills and treasury report, Kirby Anderson.
Yes, Steve and I met with Blake this morning, and as I was reviewing over this weekend, our treasurer's report, I noticed that we had a lot of money going out this month, and talking to Blake this morning, primarily curriculum purchases. So that was that time of year. Some of the things that stuck out a little bit, besides curriculum, we did have some work done over on the parking lot over on the northwest side of the football field, and that was Berry Construction, about $6,000. We had some of you might be interested in all that Comstock did fix the handrail and the door and a railing, and they also I think they have a bench out here, so that's good to see that happen. So football field maintenance, even though it's artificial turf, there is some football field maintenance that happens from time to time. There's a couple $1,000s went there. We had some, Overland Mechanical had some work over at McKinley. We looked at a portable scoreboard out at the fast pitch field at D Lagoon for $2,500. So it's nice to see something come in a little cheaper than what we're used to seeing, especially at the swimming pool. A lot of cleaning, a lot of spraying weeds, a lot of just miscellaneous things this time of year. Cleaning, spraying weeds, floor maintenance, updated the floor of the Gold Gym. That was a specialty company called Floor Sanders. I noticed too the janitors have been doing a lot of real good floor work around the building here, hallways, and I think they're working in the classrooms right now. Blake will talk about this a little bit more, but we had a large expenditure for property insurance. Our property insurance went up more than doubled because of the group that we're in, and there was a lot of claims in there, not from us, but from others, and so Blake's looking at that, and probably address that later. And other than that, I think payroll was a good-sized chunk of that deficit. We're still in pretty good shape. We have $14.5 million in our general fund, and now it's just under 13, so still pretty good shape financially, and thanks to Blake for putting everything together. Any questions?
Thank you, Kirby. Personnel, Elaine Jenke.
We have a few changes here with our personnel. Certified staff hire, Alicia Jerkus, our current elementary teacher, will have an increase of 0.5 FTE for the new school year, so she'll go from 0.5 to 1 full FTE. And then we have a support staff resignation of Madison Rockel, a special education paraprofessional over at Adams School. And then we have 2020-2022 individual contracts, a lot of twos there. Curriculum coordinator and food service director. And so I would request those for board approval.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the general consent items?
So moved.
We'll go Steve.
Second.
Second by Missy.
Sure.
Oh. It's early.
It's all right. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the general consent items say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? General consent items pass. There is no old business, so we will be moving on to our new business. We have the 2020-2021 Fergus Falls Area Special Ed Co-op 935 Facility Lease Agreement. Do I have a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, I'll second.
Thank you, Kirby, with the motion, second by Melanie. Any discussion?
Blake, is that consistent with all the lease agreements in the past?
Yes, Mark used a 2% inflation rate every year, and so I just applied that to our current lease rates. And they're currently paying off a modification project. They did do a couple rooms over there, and they're on year 13 of 15. So that will drop off their lease, which is about $16,000, somewhere in that range. So they'll see a decrease with that. So, but yeah, it is consistent with the way Mark has done it in the past.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 2 is a joint agreement contract for the school nutrition program between the Fergus Falls Public Schools and Lakes Country Service Co-op Level 4 program. This is effective from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Melanie. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3 is the additional .333 FTE teaching position for secondary math. Do we have a motion to approve that?
Instead, I'd like to make a motion to table that.
Second.
Okay. So we will table that item. Item number 4, we have a request for food service bids. We have a motion to go out for bids.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second, Missy? Thank you, Missy. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Natalie. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5 is a wage adjustment for substitute staff positions effective 2021 to 2021 school year, excuse me. Well, then, we have the certified teacher substitutes at $122 a day or $61 for a half a day, and support staff substitutes at $14.50 an hour. Do we have a motion to approve those wage adjustments?
So moved.
Thank you, Melanie. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. Any discussion?
Yeah, what is it currently? Just a reminder.
The current rate for the certified teacher substitutes is $118 a day, and then half of that obviously, and then support staff substitutes is $14.
Okay.
What was the rationale with the increase? Was it $8 increase per day? Was there like a formula or something that you guys?
We basically used the same type of formula that we've used for the entire staff.
Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's usually $4.
And then,
What was
yes,
one,
it's a
what was it,
$4.
118? I thought you said,
118 to, it's, yeah,
I thought you said
118 is
114.
a current rate, so it's 122.
okay.
So, and then I work with Matt Lemke on that
You have to
piece.
stay competitive or we're not gonna get subs.
We do have to stay competitive. Once we have done the practice of not increasing for years, and we got really behind. So we try to keep up
Right,
as
right,
long
yeah.
as staff increase, we just increase it
Makes sense.
school-wide for all positions.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6 is wage adjustment for non-affiliate staff to $15 an hour effective for the 2020 to the 2021 school year. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Melanie. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Misty. Any discussion?
Elaine, will you please describe non-affiliated staff then?
Non-affiliated, generally speaking, is our noon hour supervisors. That's our basic piece, along with our early childhood family education aides. That's our biggest group that, and this raised, they were $14.25 an hour, and this was on the budget when Mark created the wage increases to the $15 an hour. So that is our biggest group. There's about 25, probably 25, when we look at our, so they're the part-time people. They're all under 29 hours, 29.5 hours a week.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That concludes our regular school board meeting. Following this, we will be going to a school board retreat at 8:15 approximately, right here at the Outer Community Room. Just for the public and for us to put down, we will potentially have a special school board meeting. This is tentative on Monday, August 3rd at 7 a.m. right here at the Outer Community Room at Kennedy Secondary School. And then our regular school board meeting is Monday, August 10th at 7 a.m. right here at the Outer Community Room here at Kennedy Secondary School. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Melanie. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.